Now that 11 municipalities have passed plastic bag regulations, some think that next up will be legislation that'll ban plastic bags throughout the entire state of Washington. Joining us this morning to comment is Todd Meyers. He's the director for the Center of the Environment at the Washington Policy Center. Don't let that namby-pamby name fool you. He loves plastic bags. Let's bring him on the air. Todd, hello.
Good morning.
How are you doing, sir?
I am good. It's good to be on as a fellow beekeeper.
Oh, you're a beekeeper, too?
Yeah.
So you're an environmental type.
I am. I just was checking my bees this weekend. They're very happy.
So these people were laughing at us, but you, like me, go, why are we banning a plastic bag just because someone found one in a fish? We don't ban all of the other litter that people find everywhere. Why did the plastic bag get blamed?
I think it's probably goes back to The Graduate, right? The bad guy in The Graduate loves plastics, and I think ever since then, people think plastics are generally bad.
So, all right, now give me your arguments, because we have some real fish lovers here, and I don't mean love fish on a plate in a restaurant. I mean they like fish, be happy in the environment.
Yeah. Swim away, little friend, swim away.
They're buying into the idea that plastic bags are killing all kinds of creatures. Tell me whether that's true or not.
Well, I love fish, too. I'm actually on the state's Salmon Recovery Council, and we're trying to save fish. But the question is, though, anytime you make an environmental decision, there are going to be trade-offs. There are going to be things that do what you want and things that do what you don't want. And so the concern is that plastic bags get into the water and impact fish and marine mammals and other things like that.
And to be fair, that has to have happened at least once.
Absolutely. There's no question. The impact of plastic bags is certainly not zero, but it's much less than people argue. You hear this argument that there's a plastic patch, a Pacific garbage patch, that's the size of Texas. In fact, there was a researcher at Oregon State University who got very upset with that. And she doesn't like plastic bags, but she says, look, it's much, much smaller than that.
It's only the size of Vermont.
Only
it's
the
not
size
nearly
of
the size of Texas.
And
That's
one day
exactly
we can
right.
all live there.
It's about 1% the size of Texas, which, again, is not zero.
Right.
But you have to understand what the trade-offs are. And the other interesting thing, the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute did a decades-long study.
Martha's Vineyard, I know that area.
That's right, and found that the amount of plastic in the ocean is actually not increased over the past couple of decades, which is very counterintuitive given the fact that we are using more plastic bags. But it just seems that they're not reaching the ocean and the water in the rate that we fear.
That's because they strangle fish on the way down in the streams, though. I hear what you're doing.
Yes. So there is an impact, but the question is, what are the countervailing impacts? And the UK Environment Agency did a study of plastic bags versus the alternatives, and what they found is that reusable cotton bags actually have more impact on water quality. And the reason is that when you grow cotton, you have to put fertilizer on. Some of that fertilizer runs off, goes into the water, and congregates and creates what are called dead zones because they cause algae blooms and deoxygenate the water. And they found that impact on the water was about 300 times as big with a cotton bag as a plastic bag.
The cotton bags we use again and again. We don't throw them out. The plastic bags get thrown out.
Yeah, what about that? Joe figured that out. Yeah.
That's exactly right. The question, though, is that if it's 300 times as much impact, you have to use it 300 times. The same is true with energy, where it's about 173 times as much energy. So basically what that means is that you would have to use your cotton bag every week for 3 years just to break even with energy, and even more than that, 4 or 5 years before you break even with the impact for water quality. Now, some people will use it that much, but many won't because they will wash it and the bags will break down. So this is not an argument that says that plastic bags have no impact, but we ought not fool ourselves and think that cotton bags and paper bags have no impact either. You have to weigh those trade-offs, and I think that there is a sense that banning plastic bags is quick and easy and it just solves the problem without looking at what the trade-offs are.
Do we do it because it makes us feel good about ourselves? We got the bad guy, the plastic bag. And, it sort of reminds me of, remember the deal where birds were flying into windows? Apparently, windows kill many, many birds. And they fly into windows, and there's a scientific statistic on that. And then when they try to put up, windmill energy, people would say windmills are killing eagles. And in other words, trying to make something that's useful to humans have this big negative impact. Now, we have not removed windows from buildings, right?
Not that I've noticed, no.
It's not
Nor have we
efficient.
gotten rid of house cats, which kill many more birds.
Many more, and
There
that
you
was.
go.
By the way, that was the other thing. When I went to the Puget Sound Energy Tour, they put windmills, and then they put all of the other things that we absolutely adore and love, and how many birds they kill, and it was much worse.
Yes, absolutely. And so you have to keep that in mind. And so, do windmills kill birds and bats? Yes, they do. But do they? But you can't be very, very worried about those sorts of things and not then look at cats and say, well, cats are doing a lot more damage. And it's the same thing with plastic and reusable bags. You have to look
This
at
is
the
tough for people because people don't want to admit that lots of cool things they enjoy kill stuff. They don't want to look at it, right?
I think that's certainly true, but here's the one thing to remember. The richest countries in the world, like the United States, also have the best record on air quality, on water quality, on energy efficiency, on a lot of these sorts of things. And the reason is that the good thing about being environmentally conscious as we are is that we have the disposable income to go and buy, a Prius and do things that save the planet, that make us, a cleaner place and leave it for the future. That's fantastic. The bad side of that environmental consciousness is when we put looking good and feeling good ahead of the science. And I think that's really where we've gotten on this plastic bag issue, is that because we want to say, oh, look, here's an easy way to show that I care about the planet, we sort of brush aside those parts of it that we don't want to know about and that actually may do more harm than good.
We should mention at this point, Todd, your book, too, Eco Fads, How the Rise of Trendy Environmentalism is Harming the Environment. I'm surprised they didn't kick you out of Seattle for writing that book.
Where are you calling from? Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I actually did an interview on NPR, which you would have thought would have not been a very warm audience, but many of the people said that they were also frustrated that sort of the trendiness of looking green and being green had overridden the science. And there are lots of people who disagree with me on other policies, but say, I'm worried about this. True. Look,
so, what are some of the other
people
fads,
being
if you
confused.
could? I want to hear about some of the other fads in your book.
Well, I think the number one in Washington State that we hear about all the time are green buildings. So we have there's a system called LEED. We also require all schools be built to green building standards. But we've done some research, and actually the legislature did its own research and found, ironically, that green buildings in Washington State use more energy per square foot than non-green buildings.
And how is that?
Well, there's a variety of reasons. Those windows that we talk about that kill so many birds aren't very good insulators. And one of the things that green buildings do is that they increase the size of windows. And what they say is, well, that way you have fewer lights in the room, so you don't need to use as much electricity on light. And that's true. But you more than lose that because of the heat that comes in and goes out of windows. And so what you gain in lack of light, you lose because of the insulation. And we've actually done research in other states and found that this is true in other states as well, so it's not just a Washington state.
Other eco-fads?
Well, there's the plastic bags is another one that I talk about. I also talk about the compact fluorescent light bulbs, little squiggly light bulbs. And there's a trade-off there. They certainly do use less electricity, but they also contain mercury. And there's a
But aren't we beyond those now? Haven't we already evolved to LED bulbs?
We have. LEDs are still very expensive, and I hear people all the time. And I like LEDs because they provide better light, but they are not cheap to buy.
Not yet.
So
yeah.
yes, we have moved away from them. But again, there's a trade-off there. Are you more interested in the energy savings, or are you more concerned about the mercury? And then the last one, I think, which is the biggest one for me, is solar power. People think solar power is really fantastic for the environment, but solar power is tremendously expensive and provides very little energy for the dollar. And if you're worried about carbon emissions, solar energy is about the worst possible way to reduce carbon emissions. There's lots of other things we can do. Windmills are a fraction of the cost in terms of energy emissions.
Are you talking that's because it costs so much to make the panels?
Exactly right. So if you had, $1,000 and you want to say, how can I get the most environmental benefit for this $1,000? Solar panels would be about the last thing you wanted to do.
Todd Meyers, Todd, we're going to put up a link to you, and people can. We're going to actually put up a link to you and put your face on there, and people can shoot at it with some sort of a pop gun.
Let's put his face on a plastic bag. That's what we'll do.
Todd Meyers says, watch out for these environmental fads, and that plastic bags are not that bad. All right, Todd, nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you.
Matt.